Conversations, Whimsy and the Garden. I'm Elisabeth Palmer. I'm an educator at the museum. Joining me today is sculptor Patrick Dougherty, whose new work, Rough and Tumble, was constructed in our sculpture garden in March. And for more than 30 years, he's created over 250 of these large-scale sculptures in the public domain and occasionally in gallery spaces. Some of you may have seen his sculptures during your travels, and those of you who visited the museum in 2009 may remember his Looking Good installation as you entered the building. For this installation, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Laura and Barry Harmon, John Caddell, Warren Everett, Barganier Davis, Williams Architects Associated, and Valley Bank, with additional in-kind support by Warren Barrow. We also want to thank the multiple City of Montgomery departments for including maintenance, lagoon park trails, urban forestry, for all of their efforts in bringing this project to fruition. And of course, all of the volunteers that met us every day for 2 weeks, helping us strip leave and, you know, putting these structures together. So thank you very much. Patrick, thank you for being with me today. I've been a long admirer of your work, and it is over 250 sculptures now, right?
Well, we've done a little bit more than 300, 311, I think now.
It's even more impressive.
Kind of keep working.
Yeah, you're going to start a new project this month, right? You have some traveling?
In October. I'm making site visits this month. I've just visited Southern Pines, North Carolina, and Atlanta. And next week I go to the Wow Center that's in the Adirondacks and take my, and then I've got several more this month. So
you're just constantly on the move, working.
I had a lot of rental cars and a lot of beds. Some of them good, some of them bad.
That's always the way. I hope you got some good beds in your future, and good cars. So I thought I'd start with showing 3 examples before we get into Rough and Tumble of work from the past and 2 more recent from this year. And the first one is from 2015, and it's one of my favorite memories before working on Rough and Tumble, and it's Shindig from the 2015 exhibition Wonder at the Renwick Gallery in DC. And those of you who may not know, between 2013 and 2015, the Renwick was closed for renovations. And this exhibition was the celebration of reopening. And there was a lot of excitement in DC and visitors who come to DC for the Smithsonian. And at the time, I was teaching museum studies at a DC high school. And we thought, what a wonderful opportunity to show the students a renovated art space as well as this really cool exhibition. And we showed them pictures in preparation, and we really try to hype them up. These are teens, mind you, so it's a challenge. And you could tell in their faces, they're thinking, Miss Palmer's trying to make this cool, get us excited. And when we got there, we're walking through, and they're like, okay. And then we get to this gallery space with your work, and their eyes just got really wide and their mouths dropped. And it was so fun to see their wowed expressions and to interact with the sculptures and actually have fun in an art gallery space, which is really cool. You don't often get to see fun there. And they just wanted to stay. They wanted to continue to explore and be in there. And if we had let them, they would have stayed till closing or past closing. Like, they would have had to been kicked out. So that was a fun memory for me. So when I heard you were coming to the museum to do an installation, I had all of those feelings again, but also the excitement of getting to be part of it, which was really cool. And as you can see from this picture, there are individual sculptures, but they're very much a group of sort of these maybe windblown a little bit tilted nest areas is what my students called them, and that's what I'll forever think of when I see these. And so have this one, and then two more examples just to kind of show some different ways that Patrick creates his work before we get into rough and tumble. So this is a project from last month, August, Tilt-A-Whirl at the Holden Arboretum, Cleveland, in Ohio. And you can kind of see open spaces, longer walls, and it's just really, really cool. That is now on my list of places to travel when we get a chance again. Safe. And then the next one is from January of this year before our project in March, and it's Grand Central at McKee Botanical Garden, Vero Beach, Florida. And this one's more arches over the pathway, but still all of these works just kind of put you into a fantasy, organic world, and it's just really fun. And it just, not to use the exhibition title, but wonder, just amazement. So Patrick, to kind of lay some ground for those who may have seen your work but don't know who you are, how did your career as a sculptor begin?
Well, I started out as a health administrator out of college, and in my early 30s, I went back to the University of North Carolina. I had no art training, but I was committed to becoming a sculptor. At that point, I started taking classes and took classes for 2 years using the GI Bill. And at the end of that time, went home, built a studio. I thought I was going to work in my studio, but as it turned out, the work that I pursued was all on site. So even though I have a very nice studio, I'm never there. I constantly travel. I'm gone 3 weeks out of every month, and 1 week we are home, and then 3 more weeks. So I make 10 works a year, and I've been working for the last 35 years, really heavily, making a living and working and traveling and getting to meet lots of great people, had lots of great volunteers over that time, and worked with many interesting institutions.
Yeah. And your work is both around the country, but also international, right? So you really...
That's right. I've gotten a lot of opportunities, amazingly so, just using this simple material, but Korea, Australia, Japan, all over Europe, Mexico, Canada, so I haven't worked everywhere, but I've worked a lot of places.
You're working on the list. You're working on crossing them off. So, and you mentioned the material, and we were asked a few times by our volunteers this question of why sticks?
Well, I think your subconscious plays a great deal in your choices and your dream states. And of course, as children, everybody plays with sticks. I did too.
Yeah.
Made lots of forts. I'm not sure that was a preamble, but anyway, I saw the utility of this material, which seems kind of to dovetail with environmentalism, because many small twigs are constantly cut down for building sites and so forth. And I got the idea that maybe I could utilize those in my work. It was only later that I saw that there were a lot of cultures that had used sticks or that currently use saplings. For example, basket makers and furniture makers, flower arranging situations. And of course, in the Middle Ages and even before, there was huge use of sapling because they were easy to grow and they grew back. If you cut them, you got them right back again out to the same stone. Of course, if you look in the National Geographic in the 1900s, you realize that all indigenous tribes were heavily using saplings because those were easy to gather. You could cut them down easy and using them in a variety of ways, from fish scraps to, making their walls out of it and packing mud on it. So it's got a history that I didn't know about, but have been able to capitalize on.
I like that. I like the connect, not just the environmentalism of it, but the historical and global culture too. All the cultures use saplings because it's so limber and useful.
Yeah.
Which is, and I mean, you see some of these in some of the pictures, you just see you weaving the saplings together, and you really see how limber they can be to work with. And I know you have a gathering process, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say about the attachment is that that saplings tend to snag together. Okay. So they have an inherent method of joining. If you drag a stick through the woods, it's got this infuriating tendency to tangle with everything. And that's really the simplest method of joining. And sticks have a little flexibility. So if you pull them through a matrix and let them go, they snap back and hold themselves in place. So using the inherent property of the material itself to hold it together, it makes a more credible object. It's whole. It doesn't rely on string, wire, nails, or construction screws. It is itself holding itself together.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question of how the sculptures are made. And I have a few, 2 slides of pictures during construction, but it's really a lot of scaffolding just so you can get that height. So here we go. Here's our first slide. And so can you tell us how you start a project? What are the beginning stages? Do you sketch it out before starting?
Well, this morning we were organizing in the office, and we were starting to look at some of the sketches that we did make. You might see a kind of rudimentary pyramid there.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a very squashed model. You can see I'm going to raise them up. They got into my suitcase and were completely squashed. But here are the model for making these pyramids. So first of all, it's coming up with an idea or a starting point. And in this case, I'd looked at all these pyramids, and I had never worked with pyramids. And I thought, well, it's all about solid geometry. I wonder if we could take the solid part out of it and make it look like that it was a little tipsy, or somehow, wasn't as firmly placed as solid geometry might be. So we decided to make these little pillows and tip these pyramids on their edge so that they looked a little tentative. Mm-hmm. And so that was the idea. So we laid our idea out on the ground and painted it out, and then we went around and drilled holes all around the perimeter so that we'd have a place for our structural pieces. The structural pieces, as you can see, are almost small trees. Mm-hmm. Stuck them down in the ground, and then
especially like right here.
That's right. And then we had our scaffolding. You can see it's kind of an exoskeleton. So we were able to take string and pull the shape we wanted. In this case, we kind of collapsing our sticks towards a pyramid shape, but we wanted to lean too. So that was a bit problematic, that you had to imagine how the shape would be if you picked up one corner of it and set it on a pillow. Okay. So, we had to kind of start thinking. I say we because my son Sam was up there in the picture.
Yeah, he's right here.
He's my assistant. So we worked together and set the scaffolding together, and he drilled the holes for me. And then we're passing things up in this bundle because we've started to work. But after we form the piece, then we add a lot of sticks in a lot of different directions, called kind of a structural phase, because we want to be able to cut this thing loose and not have any string on it. So after it's formed in the right direction, we fill. And then the second phase is kind of the beauty phase, in the sense that it's like making a canvas and then drawing on it. So this is really a little bit about drawing. And so our surfaces, we're trying to make a luxurious surface. And so it's kind of an appliquing onto our form. And everything you do with a pencil, all the conventions you use those same conventions with working with sticks. They have the association with the woods, but ultimately they're lines with which to draw. And so we think about each stick as we put it on as to what it should do best and how it would accumulate towards a really good drawing. If you hit a piece of paper with a pencil, you tend to strike it with one weight and finish off with another. you're making series of tapered lines. And so since sticks are tapered, you can organize those tapers in one direction and make it look like that's a very active surface, that it implies kind of motion in the surface. So that frenetic quality that you see on the surface as your eye surges around on the surface, it's because we've organized the sticks in certain ways. And our final process, which is at the very end, it's kind of erasing. We have a drawing. Sometimes you have to erase things that you don't like. And then our sense of erasing is to take tiny sticks and put them over things we don't like, and then kind of reassert a certain number of lines. And you notice in the final work of Rough and Tumble, there's some very strong lines down the corners of the pyramids, and that helps you read the lines and the shape better. And in a way, we put some of those lines on at the end after we had done our cosmetic work. We went right back and tried to redirect the eye onto the corner so that the shapes were really clear.
Very cool. I really like the idea of the stick as a line. It is a really good visual, like a 3D object to represent that. And I think when we get to the finished product, I'll ask if you can point out those corners.
Sure.
Hello. And what were you saying, Patrick? Sorry.
Well, you got started on gathering, which was a very crucial part of this piece, and involved lots of people from the community, involved the parks department, and it involved everybody from the museum. All the staff was heavily invested by the time it was over. Accountants, office workers, they all turned out to help us get the leaves off of these things. We were using cherry laurel that we gathered in a park, and then we gathered some saplings, some sweet gum saplings, and maybe some maple off of private property. So we were able to get a number of truckloads. The city went after it with their big grappling truck, and so they were able to bring it over in huge, unbelievable mounds of sticks. And I think we didn't use every stick, but we used quite a lot of these piles down to the nubbin. And so, it was a great effort, community effort together, and it was a great community effort to get the city involved in it. And, and a lot of volunteers who just took pity on us and stopped and tried to help us take the leaves off and actually do some weaving as well.
Absolutely. And I know the stripping of the leaves was a huge task every day. We had people working on getting those leaves off, and I was in charge of managing volunteers. And so every time we needed a little bit of help, I'd send an email out to staff saying, hey, if you have any time, if you need to take a break, come on down outside.
We needed a swarm of locusts.
Yeah.
All we got was rain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I felt so bad.
A lot of rain in which we were gathering out in the park, and it was so wet that we couldn't actually even see straight.
Yeah.
We couldn't see what we were doing. We were just we completely inundated.
Yeah, and those were the first 3 days of the project in Montgomery. For those of you who aren't familiar with the project, and it was just rainy and cold, and you, Sam, the city, some of our staff and curatorial, they were just out there in the rain all day gathering.
Yeah, it was an amazing event, and I can't get down on my knees because I might trip getting up, but I want to get down and thank everybody wholly for doing all that work. It was great, and the piece I think is really good. I would like to mention a little bit about the placement of it.
Yeah.
We look around the garden and look for a place that we might might work. But this little circle is so perfect for featuring something as though it were on a plinth. Mm-hmm. So, we also wanted to make a kind of an object that looked like it might go with a museum, like you had an object on a pedestal. Not that you can't go in these things and look around, but it does have a flavor of being an object that you would put up on a pedestal and take a look at it. And I like it that you can walk all the way around the center core and take a look at it from all sides. We couldn't do the whole plaza because it would require a massive piece. But, and you could have to have pity on all the volunteers that would have had to take leaves off for months.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did pick a place, and then we tried to consolidate the view there. And I think it turned out very successfully.
I think so too. And those of you at home, if you, during the lockdown, when the museum was closed, if you drove down to the museum and you drove by the sculpture garden gates, you can see Rough and Tumble just right there through the gates. And we are open now. The sculpture garden is open now, sorry. And you can visit during, I believe it's 10 to 5. You can visit the sculpture garden Tuesday through Saturday. So you can go in, and you mentioned this, Patrick, that you can walk through these sculptures.
Yeah, they're meant to go in and to experience the inner shape as well.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when you see something from outside, you don't realize the scale, but when you walk in, there's a change of state, and so you feel really different when you step inside. I always think a good sculpture is one that causes lots of associations in the viewer. When they first walk up to it, they're kind of somehow remembered all of their experiences, whether it's a first kiss in the woods, or playing under a blanket in the woods, or looking at a bird nest outside your window, or it just reminds you childhood play. When we were children, we made lots of forts, and I think kids kind of recreate in their play our first desires as humans to build houses. And so kids kind of reminisce about those earlier times and the earlier impulses we have to pick up a stick or to pick up material and build a house or a place to live.
Absolutely. And I think in a little bit you can see it in this photo, the sidewalk that goes around the circle, so you can get that 360 view, but there's also paths between the sculptures, so you can be in that space and then you can enter in. Excellent. Has your process changed over the years? You've been doing this for so long.
I would say that what happens is that sculpture building is a problem-solving event, and so it's one in which it's additive. In other words, you learn new things all the time. Even your volunteers, as they work, they might do something that you haven't thought about doing in terms of the way you might handle a sapling, what you might do. Kids certainly deal with sticks in a way different way. They'll take and twist the ends together in a strange way, and a plait almost sticks together. And so you do learn, and you take on bigger initiatives. You work with new sponsors that have bigger ideas, and you have spaces that you have to fill because the scale needs to fit the space. You find yourself kind of trying to reminisce about some of the things that are happening close to the piece. It might be, you remember when we put our first sculpture into the front of the building years ago, it was kind of reminiscing about the shape of the dome on the building itself. So there was a kind of reflective quality, and it made it more essential. It made it more interesting to think that you had a kind of a shadow shape, or a series of shadow shapes that reflected something that was made in hard architecture and incorporated in the building. So I think that over the years, you get smarter about working. You learn a lot about how to work better with institutions, how to do better with your volunteers, how to epitomize what you need in a space to make the viewers come running. That our job is to excite people's imagination and to really stir them up so that they want to come look at it. That's our kind of a first strike capability. After they come and they do experience it, then they might look at it in a more careful way and say, hey, this is about drawing. But, we really want to make something that uses this space in such a way and uses sticks in such a way that it's compelling and gets people to come and enjoy it and have lots of responses to it. So, that takes time to mature that process. And so over a period of time, I've really still using sticks, still trying to work my ideas out in sticks, but I think that it's become easier, more fruitful. Of course, I've made a living. That's a great thing for an artist, and I've been able to work every day for 35 years doing the very same thing. So, whatever the maturity that goes on there. And, just as with, potters in Japan that become national treasures, part of what makes you really good at your work is repetition. We work with these materials and we work day in and day out. We clip sticks thousands of times a day. We put sticks in. We study the surface. We try to make a good drawing. We rely on our intuition and our subconscious to drive us forward. So all of these things, make better and better work, more succinct work, work that epitomizes your ideas more clearly. So, it's great to have spent a lot of time with one thing, gotten really good at it, and, become the master of it.
Definitely have. And you're still capturing people's imagination and getting them excited too, which is such an accomplishment after 35 years. And since you've been doing this for so long, a master at it, got another slide, we'll change it. And there's some pictures of you and there's Sam again. What are some of the pitfalls and some of the benefits of working in the way that you do, like looking at the space and gathering materials locally? Weather, I'm sure, is a pitfall sometimes, like the rain.
Yeah, it can be weather, but I'd say the big thing is that you're involved in kind of a athletic exercise. We work 8 hours a day. If we're out in the woods gathering, we'll gather for 8 hours a day. So there's always something, you're always dealing with some pain. Your knee hurts or your elbow hurts or you pulled your shoulder or your wrist hurts. Sam sometimes gets wrist problems, and then we have to, sometimes you get physical therapy. So the behind the scenes is that your body takes a hit just like you do with any athletic option. We're not running, but we're using our hands and shoulders and leaning into things and putting full pressure on things. And as your staff saw, when we gather, we're fearsome in the woods. When we get out there to cut, we can cut sticks,
Absolutely.
Bundle and haul. So you have to have a lot of physical stamina. And of course, physical stamina is backed by mental, I can do it, I will do it, drives people to sail across the ocean in a boat or row themselves across, this young woman that just swam the English Channel.
Oh, yeah.
It goes way beyond physical prowess. There's a kind of a strong mental state that has to go into working day in and day out. So I'd say that's the thing. And then, our challenge often is finding a good place to stay. We say what we need is a good bed. We need internet, and we need a place to wash our dirty clothes because we stink every day when we leave the site. So if we have those basic things, and we kind of take care of ourselves, generally we don't drink, while we're working, and we try to eat well. If you're traveling, you can't eat fatty food every day. You have to really be careful what you eat. You can't drink a lot of sodas, and you just really have to look after yourself, physically, because you're in it for the long haul. We do not work like binge. Like when you're in college, what you do is you put off your semester, and then the last week you try to catch up. There's no way to catch up on these projects. You have to start on the ground running the first day, and you have to get a certain amount done. You work and you work. We've never been late on a project. We always finish about noon the day of the last day. And so we know how to accommodate a time frame. I always want to overdo it. I want to build something that's bigger than I can really do. It keeps us really running towards the the finish line on the last day. So, luckily I've had some great volunteers over the time. And of course in Montgomery, we had the staff who were slavish in helping us, and it really brought us into to working right down to the minute, but finishing and polishing the piece up.
Awesome. And this is, thought, especially with like these pictures of being inside, thought it would be a good opportunity for an audience question of, she says, I assume that stick work doesn't last forever. And after, putting so much of your physical energy, your mental energy, what do you do with it after time and weather have taken its toll?
Well, I always have only done temporary work. I like the way that temporary fits using saplings because they have a natural life cycle. You usually get 2 great years. You get 1 great year, 1 pretty good year, and you still want to take the piece down while it still looks good. Because in public spaces, the person that walks up in year 3 or 4, the piece is still there, but it might be so disheveled that it really doesn't look like that much. So it's up to the organization to call time on it when it's not looking very well. You can improve it some. We've come back and worked over the surfaces sometime and improved the look of the piece and gotten another year out of it or so. But generally, they're temporary. It's just like a good flower bed. You look at it, and then at a certain point, you decide you'll change the flowers. For museums, they do have permanent pieces, but they do have temporary shows as well. So just to say that we all do temporary work, the person who's in the office doing reams of paperwork and reports, you're really doing temporary work. Doctors, lawyers, everybody does temporary work. So it is within range for sculpture to be temporary and for sculptors to do temporary work. I always think it redirects the viewer back to the most essential thing about art, and that is art is something to be enjoyed and to be felt. It's not always about buying and selling something or holding it into the future. There is a place, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is a place to find something that you can experience so completely that you're satisfied at the moment.
I like that a lot. I like that. Thank you. And let's get to the volunteers. You often, as you've said, involve volunteers from the local community within your work. And I think you've kind of mentioned this. And here are some of the volunteers from the last day. We were impacted by COVID, so we couldn't have all of our volunteers there. And so all of these people are staff with you and Sam helping in those final hours. How does the inclusion, you've mentioned this a little bit, so maybe you can expand a bit more. How is the inclusion of volunteers? How does that impact the final design of a sculpture? Is it a challenge to get everyone to work together? Are some projects easier than others?
First of all, if you'll go back and thank each and every one of the people in this picture and thank them
I will.
Hugely for me, because it was a madcap last day, getting all the scaffolding down, getting the place cleaned up, getting the saplings moved out of the park itself and out on the sidewalk where we could get a truck to come and pick them up. So I really appreciate everybody's help. In terms of volunteers, I would think that I rely on people's initial exposure to sticks during their childhood. So in a way, it's awakening those feelings. And then also, we always employ problem solving. So we have problems to solve. And so we say, work on this area in this way. This is kind of what we're looking for. Try it out. And, usually people immediately start seeing what you're trying to do and they start working on it. Then you might come along and say to somebody, well, if I wanted to be a little more effective, this is the way I would do it. And so you kind of true your volunteers up as the day goes on or as their time goes on. People that come back, of course, get much better at it because they've had a little more exposure to it. We break our effort down in pint-sized, bit-sized juniors. We're not asking somebody to build a whole sculpture. We're asking them to do the basic structural work. Then we're asking them to do some of the cosmetic work at the end. Get all the points out of the windows. Make sure all the sticks are in there firmly. Work around the baseline. Elaborate the interior. So, we have little different things that we want people to do. Of course, you do have the occasional bossy volunteer. And so what we try to do is get one bossy volunteer to boss another bossy volunteer. And so they boss each other. So, but most of the time, everybody gets into the swing of things. They all cooperate. And we work as a team. And I think what people really like about coming on site and working is that you have a solid direction. Everybody's working on the same thing for a minute. They're working on beauty. How can that be bad? They're giving a little bit of their precious time, which it is precious time, and they're throwing themselves into the effort. And I appreciate it, but also like the way that some of the energy of the community is woven right into the sculpture itself.
Absolutely. And I do want to, since we have a moment, especially with these smiling, wonderful faces, seeing how happy they are, go back to your lines and corners, since we have such a good front image of it. Are these the edges?
That's right. You can see those things are probably about 1.5 inches around.
Okay. Wow.
Some of them are 2 inches. It's hard to tell what scale things are, but what we had to do is to build something or to elucidate it so that when you were standing at the gate, or if you were standing down by the other fountain, and as you come out the garden door, that you would actually look up there and you would see some line quality on it. And so we used the biggest lines that we could handle with our own personal strength. We don't have a stick bender out there, mechanical stick bender. We have to do it by putting our foot on one end of the big stick and flexing it into kind of a circular thing, and quickly driving. It's a timing thing, driving the upper reaches into the upper wall and then backing the foot of it into the lower wall. So, it's a bit of physical prowess in that, and a lot of timing. And just like gymnasts don't use a whole lot of strength in some ways, that's the way we do it too. It's a timing issue.
Okay, awesome. All right, we got another. Oh, well, that I forgot I put this in. It's to talk about rough and tumble. What was the inspiration for rough and tumble? You mentioned pyramids, but how did you sort of stumble on that?
Well, I haven't used pyramids in the past work. Maybe a hint at it, but I thought pyramids were really interesting in the way that they get tapered to the top, and you get a lot of value because they signal, but you don't have as much work at the top as you do at the bottom. So there's a cost savings in a way in terms of time to build something that really shows from a distance, but doesn't require as much material and energy because you're tapering. And so I looked at some of the pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids, the Nambian pyramids. There's different pyramids of different eras in Africa. And so I chose some that were a bit taller, and the proportions are different. You'll see the Egyptian pyramid proportions are very flat, and these proportions are different in terms of the base to the height. And so we worked on the mechanics of it, and we worked on the math of it. We're trying to make as I said before, trying to make solid geometry that's tipped on its head. You see our pillows there that are tipping the shapes up. We can't hold firmly to anything I say. It's more about the way it looked and how it seemed to have a rollicking, devil-may-care feeling, a bit more comical than not, and just something that you want to go and take a look at and maybe crawl into there and see what's what.
Definitely do. I haven't had a chance since it's been finished to go out there myself, but I I do want to channel my inner 5-year-old and crawl into these spaces. I don't know if I'll fit, but I definitely like the urge is there.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads to the next question is, this project happened to coincide with the beginning of the pandemic lockdowns and being tasked of managing volunteers. And remember, your projects last about 3 weeks.
That's right.
And that third week is when we had our first lockdown in Montgomery. And I had to call all of the volunteers for that week and tell them, we're locking down, your shift has been canceled, we have to stay home, the garden will be closed, museum will be closed. That's such a unique situation. What was that like to work in?
Well, I think that we were anxious. I've got to let the dog has gone into the bathroom here and has shut the door. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Get out of there. Sorry.
It's okay.
I think we were concerned, as everyone around the nation was, that we were, and then we began rushing as fast as we could to try to finish because we were afraid we would be closed out and would have to leave it incomplete. And that would have been a terrible situation because it's hard for us to get back there, it would be expensive for us to come back. And what if we had to get new material? Because there's a certain life of a green branch in which it no longer bends, and we have to have flexible material, and we put on everybody's goodwill for this 3 weeks. I wasn't sure that we could pull it together for an additional 3 weeks, So I think we were concerned about the structure. I think we were concerned about our volunteers, and the staff toughed it out. They came and helped us, even though things were seemingly a bit dicey. At that point, we didn't think that many people in Montgomery would have it, or that we could spread it. But as you could see, it picked up steam over time, and there was there's been a lot of anxiety and real sadness connected with the deaths and so forth and the spread of the virus.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we did open the sculpture garden a few weeks ago. And it's just so wonderful that, that last week that the staff that was still on site came, or that were willing to stay on site and help finish, create this wonderful, beautiful sculpture for us to enjoy now that the sculpture garden is open. And slowly people have been coming back. They're interacting with Rough and Tumble. I think the garden is such a wonderful space to just sit and explore and be after being home for so long, and a good place to kind of let go of your anxiety and your stress, just to see beauty and, let your imagination run free here. What message do you want people to take away from your pieces?
Well, I don't think I have a very definite, strong directive that people should find in the work itself. As I mentioned before, a person has lots of associations when they see one thing or the other. I like the idea that they might feel more connected to the natural world. There is farm work connected to this piece, the repetition of agrarian life, and there's childhood play that's involved in the piece, and there's the specifics of making a piece of work that's an artwork. It's a drawing, it's shape. There's just the fact that you're interacting with it is just a bigger scale artwork that you're able to walk into. So I think that people can appreciate that. I would like them to look at it from a distance and see how well we've integrated it into the site itself, that we made something that looks like it belongs there. I like the idea of its familiarity. You don't know this piece specifically, but you know, some of these shapes are in your eye. They're in your subconscious. They're in things you've seen and things you've imagined, and also things that that seem right when you finally do get to see them. You think, oh, I understand that. So, you know, all of that. I do think that everyone is concerned about environment at the moment, rightly so. And if any of this speaks to the idea of making you more sensitive to the needs of the natural world, you know, we need it, but currently it needs us. You could see that when Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick, he didn't think much about the natural world. They were willing to go kill that whale. The bigger it was, the better it is. You know, the bigger the tree, let's cut it down and show what men can do. But now you find not long ago that there was a ship chasing a whale around the ocean trying to get this big rope out of its gills or something. And so that kind of represented an about face where we see the vulnerability of that whale, how he could, eat too much plastic and die, you know, just from our own neglect without even realizing it, not even taking any responsibility for it. So I think that to a degree that this sculpture might be a portal, if not a directive that might say, well, God, gee, maybe we ought to think a little bit more about the natural world and how we affect it.
I like that. That's lovely. And I hope, I'm excited. I hope people will know now that you can come into the sculpture garden at the museum. You can see this work. You can engage with it. You can think about whatever baggage you're bringing, your experiences, and either with the natural world or with these shapes, and just enjoy and have fun. And Patrick, I just want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the sculpture. I hope we can have you back to see it in person again, and with people around it, maybe. Not when it's locked down.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And listen, thank your staff.
I will.
They were great. They really hove to and helped on this sculpture. They got a lot of investment in it. And
really did. I know they got a good break afterwards, putting in all that labor that last week.
You mean after being forced not to break any sticks, they finally got a break?
Yes. See what I did there? Well, thank you so much. And I hope everyone comes see this work at the garden, and that just follow Patrick on his website, and during your travels, be on the lookout for his work. You'll find it. He's a busy guy.
Stickwork.net.
Stickwork.net. That's where you'll find him. All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Come on. Bye.
Bye.